Well, okay. I guess I can't leave you hanging. If I'm going to show you how to hack your way through an animation, it's only fair that I show you how to unhack your way through the same animation. I keep talking about how easy it is and etc., etc. So we're going to do that. I'm actually going to show you how to remove the tweaks. If you do get into something and you've tweaked everything and suddenly the letters are sort of moving in odd ways and you don't know what's going on, you're going to need to remove the tweaks. So I'm going to show you how to do that. This is the most complicated one first. This is the Chapter 3 Tutorial 2, the looping slide end animation. Now you'll remember that what this did, hang on a second, let me put this right here. You'll remember that what this did is it did this, right? It's a little loop of these guys sliding in and sliding out. And we created it pretty simply, so it's going to be pretty simple to fix. So, you ready? Okay, so here's how we clean up tweaks. Here's how we actually get rid of these things. We always have to do this, by the way, when we're saving object animations. You don't ever want to save an object animation that has a tweak in it. So if you're setting something up so that you're going to be able to use it over and over and over again, be real careful it doesn't have tweaks. Now, let's take a look, and you'll see that these two we're going to turn off, and we're just going to take a look at this one for a second, because once we fix one, we'll be able to fix all the others too. So this guy right here, that's the hold, and you'll remember that we started off with that just sort of sitting out in the middle of the world, and we moved our camera to set this as our starting position. And fortunately, that's very good, because all we have to do is come down here and hit remove tweaks, and you'll notice that it doesn't move. Click, there we go. See, nothing moved. So that means that this one and the middle one here and the middle one here, those are all fine for all three of those animations. The tricky ones are going to be at the beginning and at the end. So these are especially tricky because they're off screen. So how do you fix those? Well, here's how you do it. Currently, we're sitting on the main camera. If we change our camera view, it's going to mess up the whole animation for all the rest of these. So we want to leave the main camera exactly where it is. Instead, we're going to switch to a user camera. Now when we do this, we also need to switch to the camera mode, and you'll see these funny green lines. I'm going to drag down to back out a little bit, and you see what we have here is the main camera. Right there, that's the main camera itself, and the white lines are showing you what the main camera is looking at. So that's called the view frustum, if you want to get fancy words. This is the rectangular cone that the camera is casting out in order to take the picture. Right there is going to be the final picture. Now, when we move this around, you can see that if we take these two lines and line them up right above each other, it's like we're standing right above, looking down, and you can see how these words are slightly out of view of the camera. As we move the animation along, they then slide into view. So like right there, okay, it's cutting through the N. If we switched over to the main camera, you see there it is. That's cutting through the N right there. So user camera, that's now coming into view, and it hits its position and holds for a little bit and then slides in this direction until it's out of view again. Now that does not look like it's out of view, does it? But when we use the tumble tool and rotate so that these two white lines are right above each other, like that, now you see it's just barely gone outside of view. If we moved it back a tiny little bit, let's move this back, and you see right there, we should be seeing half of the E. So if we switch to the main camera, it's not there. User camera, let's see. How about this one? Main camera, still not there. Interesting. Oh, I'm sorry, it's way high. Got it. So, hey, I make mistakes too. So if we took this and we rotated it down, we'd be able to see that. Yeah, there we go. See, it's actually out of view this way too. So if we brought it down here, so now that looks, see that? Now the H is just barely going to be in view. And now we should just barely be able to see the H. Yeah, right like that. Okay, this is not normal. You know, usually you don't have to go to this much trouble. I'm just doing this so that you can see what's going on. Anyway, so you can see how this is moving. When it moves off, it goes to this position. So here's what we do. we're going to take this and move this back to this position, and we're going to work on this one first. Now remember, we've got 3 of these all in the same spot, so once we fix one, we'll be able to fix the other 3 pretty easily. So turn these 2 guys off. Notice I'm clicking and dragging down to turn both of them off at the same time. Let's zoom this in a little bit. I'm dragging up to move my camera in closer, and then move it over here. We're going to work on this, and what we need to do is we need to clear away the tweaks and then put the object back into the exact same position. So that's the challenge. Now if we put it right here, what I'm doing is I'm trying to get a good look at this, but I'm also looking at these white lines so I know how far this object is away from the line. Because if we put it into the same, if we put it where we think it's going to be and it ends up being like right here, we'll actually be able to see it from the main camera's view. So we're going to put it about right there, and then I'm going to turn on something that's going to give us some help. It's down here in the display menu called the 12-field grid. And this is just a bunch of grid lines. So what we can do with this now is this. Watch this. I'm going to just move the Y. Okay, I'm looking for something that has a nice line to it, like the tops of these letters. And then the edge of the Y I'm putting into a corner of one of these little grid lines, and that way we'll be able to line everything else up really, really close. It doesn't have to be super exact, but if you can get it awfully close, then it helps a lot. Great. All right, so now we know where it's supposed to end up. Okay, so that's 1, 2, 3 down and 1, 2, 3 over. That's our magic position. So you ready for this? We're going to come down here and click Remove Tweaks. You see it snapped it back to the original position. And what we're going to use to move the objects instead are these move controllers down here. It's sometimes for folks it's easier to go to the X, Y, Z. So you click on X, Y, Z, and now you get individual controls for X, Y, and Z. This one is probably going to be a whole lot of X. So just take it and drag to the left and get it about right here. Let's see, 1, 2, 3. So 1, 2, 3. So this is the corner right here that we're shooting for. Right now, notice I moved the Y over so the edge of the Y is on that vertical line. And now I'm going to adjust the Y direction until it puts, there we go. See, there's that perfect line across there, and then it puts the Y right in that corner. So to double check, I can turn on one of the other ones. This is going to be real easy. So there's the blue one, and you see that lines up almost perfectly. You can just barely see the blue sneaking out right there as the red one starts to move out and back. Got it? Okay, so that one was pretty good. Now it's time to work on the next one down right here. So we'll select this and do the same thing. It's still in the same place, so I can hit Remove Tweaks on that. Come over to the Move controls and drag this one to the left until the edge of the Y, the point on that Y, lines up with that line. And then let's move it down until it sits right in that corner, right about there. And then we can check it with the next one. So that one's pretty awful good too. Well, let's see. We're also negative 434, negative 21. So negative 435, negative 21. So we're awfully close on each one of these. If you like, of course, you can just come down here and type those numbers in. So give it a click, set negative 434, hit tab, and then go negative 21 and hit tab again. And oh, you know what? I never removed the tweaks. So even though I've got these, I can do that now. Remove tweaks, perfect, and there it goes. So there we go. So now I've got all 3 of those. 1, 2, 3 in the right position. Time to do the end. So we'll do the same thing. Again, make sure your user camera is turned on and you've got the camera control. And now we're going to move over looking at this one. So back up to there. So when we're looking at this, we're trying to, again, make sure that we're looking at it from a pretty head-on view. And oh, you know what? It's always best to get those 2 white lines lined up just like that, so that way you know if it's going to end up in the right spot or not, or if it's completely out of control. This is just a little bit of fiddling. Okay, we'll do it like that. And this one's a little tough. Now I do remember from when we started that there were no rotations involved in this, so that makes it a little bit easier. When this thing is so sort of off kilter, it's best to just find a corner and see if that works. We'll get on to a little fancier way of doing this with, say right there. Well, let's put it right here. That'll be easy. So we know it's 1, 2, 3 down and 1, 2, 3, 4 over. We can also see if it's completely out of position, if it's going to get closer to this to these white lines and accidentally get into view. So there we go. The corner of that is going to be right there. So remember how to do this. Select the top one, hit remove tweaks like that, and now go over to our move controls, and remember it just sort of slid straight out from this. So let's do the Z, and we just need to scrub this farther and farther over and see if it ends up in the right spot. So where was that? About right there, right? Yeah, nice. So that was 1, 2, 3 down and 1, 2, 3, 4 over. We can double check that position by moving the next one over and seeing if it lines up. Oh, see, that's perfect. When you end up seeing these sort of zigzag lines where it goes blue and red and blue and red, that means the planes of the objects are in exactly the same space. So the rendering engine can't figure out whether to show the blue one or show the red one, so it just alternates, and you end up with this. Well, that means that we are really good. We really nailed it as far as where these things need to go. So that was pretty easy. That was 563. So we'll come down to this one, hit remove tweaks, go here and then type in 563, and then go to this one, remove tweaks, change, and go to 563. Very good. And now let's back up a little bit, and we should have everything looks like it's pretty much working. 1, 2, 3, and now we can switch from user camera back to main camera. Okay, that looks good, and I'll turn off the 12 field grid, and let's see, bang, right there is my cursor. Okay, see, everyone is hitting the same point. That is perfect. All right, so there you go. That's how you remove the tweaks. That's how you unhack an animation. Now that the tweaks have been removed, you can now save this out as a project, and then open it up at any time, and then re-edit the contents. So say you've got this animation thing right here. Say we go once a time. ... There we go. And of course, you know, everything's going to update, so we're doing our nice looping animation just like that. So you get the idea. Now, that's how you fix this end slide. Let's now take a look at the looping spin. This one you're going to be surprised. Remember, we only had one track, one pose, as a matter of fact, and we didn't even tweak it. For this one, remember, we used this pose action down here that's called spin Y. So we're done. This one was never hacked in the first place. Haha! So we're going to change this to the unhacked spinner. There we go. This is the unhacked spinner. Ta-da! So there we go. The unhacked spinner is perfectly fine. We don't even have to touch it. Now the cool thing about using pose actions is this. You can change them. So spin Y. If I suddenly said, well, you know, I would really like to see what that looks like doing a 720 instead. Well, there you go. Now you've got a 720. All right, perfect. If you decide that you'd rather have this as a pitch, let me bump this back down to 360 so it's not going so fast. All right, now it's spinning this way. Now it's pitching forward. Get it? That's what pitch means. Like you pitch forward or pitch back. There you go. And of course, the last one here is a roll. So you go, hey, what's the roll look like? Well, there you go. So now you get the idea, right, about why doing these using the pose actions and pose controls are so much easier. It's because you can do stuff like this. You can just change it on the fly anytime you like. So that one we didn't have to change. Very cool. Last one now is going to be our rock animation, the rock back and forth. So this one's going to be a little trickier because we involved rotations. So here we go. Remember how this one worked? Let's set this right there and play this back. So you see it rocks back and forth with a nice little ease in and ease out at the end. Perfect. All right, so this is one of those where we don't have, we only have one track. So we don't have the second track to match up to the first track to make sure everything's in the same place. So what we're going to do for this one is a little more complicated. Not that much more, really. We're just going to duplicate it. So we're going to duplicate this track. Now when it duplicated it, it duplicated the whole thing with all the tweaks and everything. So we've got a perfect match. So this one, if you double click on this, we can change the name. So we're going to say delete once checked and hit enter, and there you go. So now we're going to call this one delete once checked, and this is the one that we're going to fix. So here's how we do that. Let's start with the middle, just for giggles. Okay, so we're going to take that and we're going to come down here and hit remove tweaks. Now when we remove the tweaks, it didn't move very much, did it? It moved a little bit. Again, we don't want to change the camera, so we're going to switch to user camera and go to camera controls, and when we take a look at this, you can see that there's a slight shift right there. There's just a slight shift, and it looks like it wasn't even rotated. It just looks like it's down a little bit. You see, if we zoom in tight on this, you can see that the front edge here is lined up with the front edge here. So it wasn't even rotated, it was just moved. So let's try to fix that. Let's go, Y is up and down, so we'll adjust this Y. Well, maybe about there. And then we'll adjust Z. Okay, and then move Y down a little bit more. Yeah. Okay. And we're moving the camera. Make sure you move the camera, otherwise you'll tweak it again. We don't want to do that. And let's spin this around. Okay, so check that out. So we matched up the Y, but now you can see the Z, the E was off. So it was rotated. So we're going to use the global rotation right here. And you may have to just experiment to figure out which one it's doing. Okay, so it's not this one, so hit undo. And it's not going to be this one, which is the Z. So we know it's going to be the Y. So what we're looking for here is we're just tickling it so that we're getting the distance here to match the distance right there. You see, you can just barely pick that out. We're looking for the distance between all these front faces to be the same. Once they're the same, we know that the rotation is the same. And once we've done that, we can now adjust the Z again. So it's pretty darn close. Remember, we don't always need it to be exact. Pretty darn close is usually good enough. Okay, so, oh yeah, so that's a little bit high. You know, there was a tiny bit of extra rotation on this because you see how the Y is almost a perfect match at the bottom and the E is high on this side. So I'm maybe getting this a little bit more perfect than we need, but let's see what happens. See if we can get it a little bit tighter. 1 degree, there we go. So if we do that 1 degree and then push it in a tiny bit and then go up. Again, I'm just sort of looking at edges of corners right there and how these things all line up with each other. It's hard to tell someone what you're looking at. Oh, now look at that. It's off again. See, it's got a big change. And that would be our forward and back. Nope, not that one. Not that one. There we go. Okay, so maybe that one's it. See, like I said, once you do rotations, it's a little bit more trouble. Okay, so that one's pretty close. And then let's move the Z forward again. Feels like that's an operation. Okay, so there we go. All right, that is pretty darn close. See, there's just a tiny bit of difference here, tiny bit of difference there. We're probably dealing with ½ degrees at this point. That's going to be plenty enough for us. So you see why we duplicated this whole thing, because there would be no way possible to get these things to match if you didn't have a guide, one of these things to work with. Okay, so now we go back to the main camera, and let's turn this guy on and off Yeah, there's a tiny little shift, but it's really really not enough to worry about. Okay, perfect. So that one's done. The next step is to do this one right here. So we're going to take this, turn on the guide, and then for this one, remove tweaks. So that's going to rotate it all the way over there. And now we're going to switch to user camera again and pull this out a little bit. Make sure the correct one is selected, and now go back down to global here. And let's see what we're going to do. Let's try this left or right. Oh boy, it's got it all the way over here. So let's change the camera. Make sure we're on user camera. I don't want to mess anything up. And let's look at it from the top. And if we jiggle this around pretty close, about like that. Camera. Okay, so that looks like it's the same width there. It's the same width there. It's pretty good, pretty good, pretty good, pretty good. This is down a little bit right there, and it's up a little bit right there. So let's try the Z and see if that fixes it. Right like that. Ooh, wow, I think we nailed that one. Okay, that's looking good. Let's zoom in a little bit tighter to make sure. Yep, you can see there's a tiny little difference right there. But boy, you wouldn't be able to tell that. Excellent. Okay, good. Back to main camera. So here we go. And double check that. Oh, look at that. You can't even see a shift. Woo! Nice. Okay, so that's good for there. And then it moves to here. And then it moves to this spot. Oh, it goes back to its spot again, right? So, all right. So here's the thing. You'll remember that if we delete this, say we're going to duplicate this and move it over to here. Okay, if we do that, then we're going to have to reset the transitions. Now the transition only had this little ease here and here adjusted, but sometimes they can get pretty complicated. So let's try not to do that. So here's another way of doing it. You can select this just like it is. I'm sorry, let's select this one, because remember this one and this one are the same positions. And then we say, okay, so that's global rotation of -96y and -2z. So if we come down here and just type in -96y and -2z. Of course, it looks terrible because we haven't removed the tweaks yet. So when we click on remove tweaks, bang, there we go. So that's all done just like that. Now there is one other way of doing this, which is by saving out the pose. We'll go into that in a later chapter, but you can select one pose and save all the settings for one pose and then go and apply it to as many different places as you want. So that's another really cool way of reusing your work. Okay, so here we go. So all these have their tweaks gone. The rocking action looks perfectly good. We are now going to delete this because it has been checked. And play back. There we go. Okay, so congratulations. You now know how to unhack an animation. Yay, you're a pro. So seriously. Removing tweaks is a very valuable skill. Hope you remember that for the times when you're going to put tweaks into something. Like I said before, it's really important that you never have tweaks in animations that you're going to save. So when you're saving your own presets to reuse your work for the mass production factory, you know, you get the job and it's going to have to do 100 animations and you need to set up a preset and reuse it over and over and over. Do not tweak it. Or if it does have tweaks, make sure that you clean them up using the unhacking techniques that we just discussed in this tutorial. Okay, good. On to the next chapter.